Welcome to New Business in Later Life with me, Ildiko Seeley. I'm an entrepreneur, the routine queen, and the champion of thriving over 50. I'm obsessed with morning routines, energized living, and building businesses that work with your life, not against it. Each week, I share real-life stories from bold later life entrepreneurs who have said no thanks to retirement and hell yes to reinvention, while discussing good health routines for great business. Whether you are launching your first venture or scaling your encore, you are in the right place. Let's get you fired up, focused, and firmly in the driver's seat of your next chapter. Let's dive in. Today's guest has spent 35 years navigating the corridors of the European Commission and still has the energy of someone just getting started. Sue Bird is a powerhouse of purpose, now working as a consultant with multiple projects on the go, all while making time for her passions. And these are early morning swims, annual goal-setting rituals, and supporting vital charitable work in Malawi through her organization Mbedza. Sue lives a full and deeply intentional life. She's got a heart for people, a mind for strategy, and a diary that probably needs its own assistant. Please welcome the ever-inspiring Sue Bird. Good afternoon, Sue. Welcome to the show, New Business in Later Life.
Good afternoon, Ildiko. Good to see you. And I'm happy to join you this afternoon.
What's the weather like are you in Brussels at the moment?
Yeah, I'm in Brussels. It's a little bit sunny now, but it's been very changeable. It reminds me of British weather, which is rain and sun and shine and clouds, and yeah. So it's been a real mixture today. I need to give a little bit of background, if I may. I joined the European Commission in Brussels some 36 years ago. And I had a long, enriching and fruitful career here in Brussels, and with many stories over the years, contacts, stimulation, enrichment. That I left behind 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
And then I did, in fact, create a business then. And I'm now a European public affairs consultant. And I've been doing that for the last 3.5 years. So as soon as I left the European Commission and retired as such, but from full-time employment, but I will never retire. I will never retire.
Oh, you ruined my last question.
I can explain to you very well why I will never retire, and that's not just to do with European Public Affairs Consultancy.
Let's return to that one towards the end.
Yeah.
So
fine.
this is a consultancy business that you set up after you left full-time employment. So
Yeah.
what do you do as a consultant?
Well, I mean, while I worked for the European Commission, I was steeped in work and networking and people in and around the European Quarter in Brussels. So I know how the policies work. I know how the programs work. I know the people, I know the institutions well, the European institutions. So because I did not want, once I'd retired from the Commission, I did not want to give up the work on European affairs completely, from one day to the next, which is what some people do. Quite a lot of people do. They leave the European Commission or other of the European institutions, and they decide, that that's enough. They've done their 30 plus years or whatever, and they're going to do something completely different, which is fine. It's good decisions for them. And you hope as you say goodbye to them that they find a fulfilling life subsequently.
Well, you were obviously in love with it, so you kind of stayed in the...
Yeah, I mean, I very much appreciated, which I like, actually. I discovered this in myself, that I still wanted to be involved in European public affairs, still wanted to use my skills, particularly my transferable skills, my knowledge, my competence, to continue at least for a few years on in European public affairs consultancy, and working on, as it's turned out, many different projects which don't necessarily coincide with the policy and program areas that I concentrated on when I was with the Commission, because with this transferable skills and knowledge scheme that I'm on, so to speak, then it's been relatively easy over a period of time to pick up assignments in a number of different policy and program areas, both with other consultancies, with bigger consultancies in Brussels, but
Okay.
also one or two other organizations, think tanks, NGOs, who've wanted some help in one way or another. And it's been a delight to be able to pick up those various activities and, and undertake research and write reports and work with others on calls for tender that they are putting together to reply to an open call from the European Commission or other institutions. And then I help them with a joint bid
Okay.
for
Yes.
funding from the European institutions in particular subject areas where I can help them.
I was going to
So,
ask if you want to go into any details of what
mm,
you do, what you research.
obviously European public affairs, but within that, yeah, there's a number of subjects that I concentrate on or have concentrated on. And I'll give you some examples. I worked on a call for tender in housing policy. I worked on a call for tender related to evaluation monitoring of European employment and social affairs policies. I have been included as an expert recently on a project in Tanzania. I worked on a partnership that the European Union have with what was it, Indonesia? That's right.
Okay,
And
that's
and
quite
the
far-reaching.
and the communication strategy in relation to that partnership. So I contributed on that. That was a call for a tender again that myself and the consortium I was working with proposed funding for. I've also done some work, some research and report writing on funding available for wildlife trade and wildlife crime, which was again,
Yes, that's
in the European institutions, I never worked on specifically on wildlife trade and wildlife crime, but I could do the work for this
so
particular organization. Yeah,
interesting. So in is it in Europe? Like does it cover Europe or anywhere else in the world?
it's
Or like
based. I mean,
international?
yes, I mean these consultancies that I work with and think tanks and NGOs and so on, they they either deal directly again with European public affairs in the areas, examples of which I've just mentioned, but also, um, they can be representative organizations who have a membership, and the membership asks them to influence or lobby or research issues to do with the European and links with the European institutions.
Fine.
So typically, the consultancies, for instance, do research. They help different organizations, their clients, with lobbying and influencing strategies in and around the European institutions. And my expertise means that I can help in those areas. And just to let you know as well, Ildiko, a cross-cutting issue that I work on, um, which again forms part of my consultancy, is that I'm a trained facilitator,
Okay.
which means, and this could inputs in any of these areas. It's not a vertical expertise; it's a cross-cutting expertise.
Okay.
And I facilitate groups who wish to come together, maybe in an environment outside work, and I do some team building with them. I work on strategies, unit or organization strategies with them, or I work on change management, and they uh, they usually benefit from events such as that, especially if you use participatory tools and inclusive processes, inclusive role plays, work-related games, this sort of thing, which teases out discussions which you wouldn't normally have in that sort of way
Yeah,
in the
just
workplace.
just simply by moving the environment,
I'm using particular tools and
techniques. Yeah.
processes and techniques to be able to draw people out to talk about things in a way that they wouldn't do normally at work, but which is very beneficial.
That all sounds really interesting and quite a lot. It sounds like you just described 10 people's work. So how do you juggle all of that?
They're one-off
Okay.
projects, Ildiko. I mean, I might spend on any of these projects that I've just mentioned. I mean, one project, the longest project I've had, long over a period of time has been 15 days, and others I've
Okay.
spent 3 days, 5 days, 2 days. A little bit of research over a number of hours, and then come back to it and provide another few hours and that sort of thing. Um, and I mean, it's as I say, it's wonderful because it covers so many areas, so many.
Indeed. It's like
Um,
I can only remember a couple of them really from the
mm,
long list of really quite varied areas you've
mm,
researched. But which ones are your favorites? Are there
mm.
any of them that are really quite outstanding that you particularly enjoyed researching and working on?
I wouldn't say any particular subject as such, any particular policy or program. I think the best part for me is probably doing the writing. I'm not over keen on doing the research because sometimes you have to generate the knowledge before you can actually write something about it. But I do,
Yes.
I do actually enjoy, sort of settling down and write. I've got my knowledge in front of me now. Now I need to sort it out, have it in my head, put it in a logical order, and then present it in an original way which serves the purposes of the client, according to the terms of reference I've had to undertake the research or the study or the contribution to the tender or whatever it may be.
I was just going to
Uh,
ask, does it keep you busy full time or is it a part-time kind of
yeah,
consultancy job?
very much part-time. Yes,
Okay.
and on and off. On and off. So if I had a contract for 15 days and I had to do it within 3 months, which I have done, then clearly, there's quite a bit of time investment because you have to find 15 days to work on a project with over a period of 3 months. So that is a significant amount of time during that time. For me, anyway. For me.
So hang on a minute. So do you have a deadline to submit it within 3 months, or do you have to actually physically split the 15 days across the 3 months to do certain bits of work at certain specific
Hmm.
time?
I probably
Because
have a deadline. Typically, you'd have a deadline for the project completion.
mm,
But within that deadline, you're going to be paid for so many days in order
right,
to perform that project. Not really, it's not really very scientific in the end as to how many days you actually do. But if you sign up to do 15 days in 3 months, that's all they'll pay you. But if it takes me because of the research I need to do, or because I'm particularly demanding of myself, which I can be, and demanding of myself in the sense of producing the optimum project, then
right,
if it takes me 17 days, then I would have to do 17 days in order to produce something which I'm satisfied with and ultimately which the client is satisfied
yes,
with. So, and then typically, um, uh, that's work. I have the choice then of when I work. I can just fit it in when I can. So, totting up my hours and time, so, and some of these cases, the client's quite right to say, well, 15 days, Sue, we pay you for 15 days and no more. And then it's up to you. I mean, the arrangement is quite good because it focuses your mind on
yes,
what you can do within a particular timescale, but it does give you flexibility in terms of how you spread that workload out, and also ultimately what sort of time you actually spend on the project to ensure
yes.
that it is to the standard that you would expect of yourself, one would expect of yourself, and also, even more importantly, that the client expects.
Yes. So you need to be really quite disciplined with yourself in order to
Yeah,
make sure that you don't
yeah.
really, I know what you mean, that you allow yourself some flexibility, that if
Hmm.
it's not quite right or up to that standard, you allow yourself a little more time. But otherwise, you
Mm,
have to be really quite disciplined
mm,
to make sure that you come out with the quality work within the allocated time and then
sure.
move on either to another project or to actually have your time to yourself.
I have various what I call retirement projects.
Okay,
So,
go on.
yeah, which are mostly but not exclusively non-remunerative. So, a project that I've been working on today, for instance, I met a group of people this morning to discuss this, is that I founded and supported financially an HIV testing and counselling centre in Malawi.
Okay.
And I twin up on that. My partner charity is a charity called Embedsa, which is based in the UK. And the aim of Embedsa is to reduce poverty in Malawi. And my HIV testing and counselling centre is one of the projects, the poverty reducing projects that Embedsa runs. So, um, I mean, I've been fundraising in a number of ways over the last few years. Um, and which has been very motivating, good fun.
Yeah,
You feel as if you're serving a good purpose, which to all
absolutely.
intents and purposes you get
Absolutely.
good feedback that you are. But this morning, for instance, I was with a group of people from Brussels who've been out to Malawi recently with Embedsa, and we were talking about their experiences, and myself and a friend have recently set up a non-profit making organization, which we call Embedsa Belgium, under Belgian law. And we've set ourselves the goals, the overall goals of awareness raising about Embedsa and the needs in Malawi, at the same time as fundraising for the projects that
Yes.
Embedsa runs.
And how's it
So
going? How's your awareness campaign going?
We've just started, really. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
we're an association that has just set up. But yeah, I've managed to identify someone who may well be able to help us with communications. So, the whole which is quite a big area of work. Someone who will take care of communications for us, and we're just at the beginning of trying out a partnership with that at the moment, which is very exciting. It's all voluntary. This is non-remunerative completely. So it's myself and my friend, and then this lady we've identified who could help us with comms. Clearly, we don't pay anybody, and I don't pay myself, and all the money we raise, at the moment at least, goes to the projects in Malawi
Yeah.
to try and help the people there.
That's really
Mm.
interesting that you look almost more enthusiastic about this project than your paid work.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
suddenly
In
kind
some
of all
ways,
opened up and
yes.
you're
In some
talking
ways,
with a bit
yes.
more oomph. So what
Yeah.
other things, what other non-remunerative um, um
Non-remunerative. Okay.
that's what I was trying to
Um,
say.
I currently chair one of the committees in my local Rotary club, which is Brussels Rotary. Um, Club Rotary de Bruxelles in French.
Okay.
And I chair one of their committees. We have some money, a small amount of money available to us each year, allotted to us by the club, and we identify particular projects that we want to support, which serve as helping groups in Brussels who deal with disadvantaged people in Brussels in all sorts of different ways.
Okay.
So the handicapped, the refugees, asylum seekers, homeless people, young people, trafficked people.
Oh, that's probably even
I
more
try to
interesting,
encourage
isn't
them.
it?
Yeah, yeah, that's quite interesting as well. So that I do. I also, as a facilitator, I also belong to the International Association of Facilitators, which is a professional body um, to provide professional support to facilitators.
Is this the kind of work that you mentioned earlier where
Yeah,
you go into
yeah,
corporate companies and you take their team out into an external location and then you help them team
yeah.
build?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I chair the Belgian chapter currently of the International Association of Facilitators, and we typically organise an event once a month, which provides professional support
Yes.
to facilitators based in Belgium. We try and meet in person. We have a number of venues that we use. We draw in the skills and expertise of different facilitators who come along and try new techniques or showcase existing well-known techniques, or techniques that are well known to them that they want to make more widely known. Um, so that is a regular commitment as well. At my local church, Holy Trinity Brussels, at the moment I chair the facilities, what we call the facilities committee, which manages the buildings.
Right.
And
Okay.
we have a number of big projects on the horizon, which are going to be quite challenging, both in terms of not least fundraising, making sure we've got the money to do them. That's a big thing. But then actually setting up who's going to do it, how it's going to be done, following it, monitoring
Oh,
it,
that's
making sure it's implemented, and that we have church buildings which are better fit for purpose for the 21st century.
that almost sounds like
Yeah.
you're going into project management there.
And that fits, Ildiko, very well, as you will
Yeah.
understand, with my extra interest in property development. Now,
Yes.
um,
And the
I
interesting part of that is that if I remember right from
mm,
previous conversation, your property business is in the UK. Is that
mm,
right?
I don't have a property business as such. I haven't
Okay.
got, I'm not set up in business. I'm an individual. But I do rent out 2 buy-to-let flats in the UK, and I do have a holiday home stroke let in the south of France as well. And I'm currently looking at possibly taking on a project myself, um, buying a rundown property. You would know this very well. Buying a
Yes.
rundown property, refurbishment and refurbishing, um, selling on, hopefully making a little bit of profit.
Yeah.
And again, that would be clearly, we set out to be for that to be remunerative, i.e.,
Yes.
to to pay back clearly. Although it would be a little bit of a trial as well. So,
Why?
I shan't worry too much if it breaks
I'll say
even
breaks
a
even because you
little
certainly don't
bit.
want to lose money.
No, no, no,
Are you
absolutely not. So it's a
are you
certain
going
amount of risk
to?
involved.
Yeah, always. Well, it's a
Yeah,
certain amount of risk involved in any business, not just property.
yeah.
But are you planning to do your refurbishment projects in the UK or France or Belgium?
The UK
Right.
market is
Okay.
best out of the three markets there. The UK's market is best for the sort of project that I've just described, and
Mm,
that you would, as I say, you would know well.
yes.
No, the market's not the same in France nor in Belgium. Not nearly as stimulating, uh, moving. The market in the UK moves quite quickly, and
My
yes.
reaction was for the length of time it takes to buy or sell a property, which can take months. Now, when I talk to my dad about the property business, he's always astonished because in Hungary, you could
Mm,
literally rock up to someone with a case full of money and sign the property over,
mm,
kind of thing. So you can literally buy a property in a day, and then you can together go into all the utilities companies and the or phone them up and go into the land registry office and get the deeds changed over, and you can complete a purchase in a day. That's
mhm,
crazy. And here in the UK, it takes like 2 months if you're lucky, three
mm,
months in general, for all the zillions of searches and stuff that needs to be done. And then, of course, the solicitors always throw in all sorts of spanners in the works,
mm,
and then you discover things. So, how does it compare to Belgium and France, this kind
mm.
of process?
Well, I mean, it takes us at least as long with all the checks and
Mm.
balances and ticking boxes and that sort of thing. It takes at least as long, if not longer. And the punitive element of purchasing property in France or Belgium, and which is the most off-putting factor for someone like me, is that the upfront charges are quite high. So,
Okay.
for instance, I'm in my flat here that I own myself in Brussels, which is where I live. And I'm sure this is still the case that you pay anything up to 14 or 15% of the value of the property in extra charges and taxes.
My goodness.
Um,
So the
n-
stamp duty land tax in the UK, which, well, I don't know how much you follow
Mm,
what's
I
going
do.
on. But
Yes.
obviously, I would imagine you would. That last autumn,
Mm,
the Labour Party introduced I can't remember how many percent additional percentage onto the
mm,
stamp duty land tax if you have a
yeah,
property. So obviously, you've got
sure.
two properties here in your name,
Mm,
so you would be clobbered. But that's still a fraction of what you are saying they
mm,
charge in on the
yes.
continent.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that is a huge off-putting factor straight away. Unless you're very careful with your investments here, well, you should be careful anyway, but unless you look carefully and assess carefully, do very careful due diligence, you maybe look to hold the property for the longer term, you rent it out, you let it
Yeah,
adjust its value over time. And clearly in both France and Belgium, the property values have been going up over time for sure, but maybe not in the same uh, strategic fashion that has been the case in the UK,
that's
um,
really
because
interesting.
the
Mind you,
markets are slower.
and it's sort of different in a sense that obviously the UK is an island, that the land available is limited.
Mm,
So, yeah, there's that sort of amount of scarcity in there, I suppose. But I mean, yeah, over time, property prices are indeed going up. But
mm,
I imagine that is still the case on the continent as well. But yeah, I suppose
mm,
if you don't have that kind of a profit margin with a flip, like the refurbishment and resale project, then yes, indeed, it would be worth to keep it for longer term to allow for that value increase. While yes, you are right that the flipping in the UK is fairly kind of simple. Obviously, you still need to do your numbers and make sure they work. Okay, so do you come to the UK often?
yes, I do, but that's for family reasons.
Oh, okay.
And only, well, I've got plenty of friends in the UK anyway, so I would come back for friends on occasions, but it is family. That's another key. I refer to it as a post-retirement project,
I mean,
patronizing towards my
post-retirement.
father. Yeah, it's a
Come
bit
on,
sorry, it's a bit patronizing towards my father to say that because he's very elderly and he has a full-time carer. And when the full-time carer goes on on leave or every 2 weeks and then annual leave and Easter and Christmas and so on, someone needs to cover. And so my sister and I share that between us. So I'm
right?
back in the UK for 5 or 6 days per month, at least 5 or 6 days per month. And it's
Okay,
it's relatively easy because I travel from Brussels on the Eurostar to London. And then it's a relatively easy journey by train from Euston up to the Midlands, where I come from and where
right.
my dad is. And I can provide the care for 4 or 5 days and then go back to Brussels again.
Because most of your work is research, it's computer based. I
Mm,
suppose you can then take your work with you. But what I
yep.
was laughing at earlier, you said your post-retirement projects and things. It's like you haven't actually retired yet. Well, you may have retired from a job, but you certainly haven't retired by far. So I
Mm.
don't think it's fair for you to refer to anything as post-retirement.
Well, yes, people in Brussels perhaps would understand that better in the sense that my employer, my former employer, the European Commission, I mean, clearly for them, when I left full-time employment and I received my pension, then I retired. So, and that is understood here in Brussels that
Oh, okay.
European
Yeah.
European institutions officials, when you leave work because you've got older and you take your pension, then you are retired. So that's why,
Well,
and it's a
yeah.
bit ironic. I use it a bit ironically as well,
Yeah.
post-retirement, because I shall never retire. I
Yeah.
shan't. I mean, not either. Don't get me wrong. Not that I will continue, or could I hope to continue living life at some of the pace I do now, for sure. No, because I shall have to, and that's something I shall have to work through myself, that over time, as I get older, then I will slow down.
Yeah, that will come naturally though, and you will
ah,
adjust.
mm-mm.
You will adjust naturally,
I hope so.
you would
I hope
think.
so. Mm. Because I'm so enjoying what I do, because
The
the
thing
big
is,
thing,
yeah, exactly. Looking at
uh,
you, come on, you're smiling. You're full of enthusiasm talking about
yeah,
all of these things you do, which, as I said
yeah,
initially, kind of felt like you were describing 10 people's work, and you're still so full of life and energy and
wow.
oomph. So it's kind of like I can't see you slowing down anytime soon. But when you do start to feel that you are slowing down, you will just adjust to it anyway, or not. as the case may be. I mean, I've got arthritis, I still keep going. It doesn't mean that I'm going to sit down and let it ruin my
No,
life.
sure.
So,
I, I think it's being a question of being realistic about what you physically can and mentally, I think, what you can do and what you can't do at a certain point in
yeah,
time. And just being sensible, I think, in probably in looking after yourself. And I mean,
absolutely. But actually, on that point, I was going to
yeah,
pick up on it that it
sure.
is pretty amazing to hear that you are doing an awful lot to intellectually stimulate yourself
Mm,
with the
mm,
kind of work you do.
mm,
But talking about keeping yourself young and fit, do you
mm.
have any particular life routines that keep you
Yes,
young and fit?
yes,
Go on,
absolutely.
please share.
Swimming. I absolutely
Okay.
love swimming. Now, going back to my Malawi project and the Embedza Belgium ASBL that we founded, myself and a friend founded recently, and the fundraising side last Saturday, so just a week ago tomorrow, I did a sponsored swim. I did a
Okay.
sponsored swim. So I belong to a lovely club in Brussels. Um, and I go there every day. I went there this morning, well, as many days as I can. I went there this morning and I swim up and down the pool. It's a 21-meter pool, so it's not a very long pool in the grand scale of things. Yeah,
The
I
Olympic
mean,
pools are 50-meter long, aren't they?
but last Saturday I gave myself the um a challenge of swimming 200 lengths, 200 lengths of this pool.
200 lengths. That's
Yes.
a fair amount.
Yes, which is about 4 kilometers
Yes.
altogether. And I collected loads of sponsors. I'm still, I've got some papers here where I've got all my sponsors and I'm contacting them all and saying, I did the 200 lengths. You said you would sponsor me for X amount. Here's the account number. Kindly pay. And by
And
the way, you'll be contributing to Embedza Belgium, who will uh, pay to ensure the projects that we're running in
mm,
Malawi do what they're supposed to do and reduce poverty there. Anyway, so that is a good example, if you like, of how yeah, I mean, your question was, well, how do I structure my day? How do I try and keep fit? And that clearly is part of it.
yes.
Um, and I think the other thing is the other things are maintaining a balance. So the swim in the mornings, that's very good for the brain because you're not thinking particularly about, well, you are thinking, but you're not puzzling over some sort of problem or intellectual challenge or trying to read something or something like that or trying to remember something necessarily. You're swimming up and down the pool and it's giving you physical exercise.
Yes, of course it does. Yes. Do you
And
count? Do you count the length you do, or does
yes,
some?
I do.
So you
I
kind of
do.
concentrate on the counting rather than thinking about anything else.
I do that at 7:30 in the morning if I can, not every day.
Mm.
Because if I've been out the evening before and I'm late to bed, late to sleep, then I've tried it. I've tried getting up at quarter to 6 o'clock in the morning when I've had a late night and go swimming the next day. And I've thought, no, Sue, that's not very sensible. That is burning the candle at both ends, definitely. And in my mid 60s now, that's the sort of thing you think to yourself, need to be careful with things like that.
Yes.
You could ridden it when you were younger, for sure, but it
See,
behoves one
you
when you're a bit,
adjust.
yeah, yeah, you have to. Otherwise, I will have health problems. 1 plus 1 equals 2, or 2 plus 2 equals 4 if you make different choices. But you have
Yes,
to make good choices, in
absolutely.
that area, in terms of being able to maintain a balance. And when I say a balance, and it's an ongoing challenge, balance physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever the case may be, so that
Yes,
you don't stress. That's the big thing. Try and avoid stress. All right,
but
adrenaline and motivation, yes,
the
and a little bit,
determination, yeah. But
yes, and
yeah,
a
yeah,
quickening of the heart, but
absolutely. Your mental health is to reduce your stress, isn't it?
mm,
What kind of things? So obviously, I mean, swimming, I think, is just the perfect thing because you're
mm,
floating, you're exercising, you're not thinking about hard things. There's this whole bunch of things. I mean, all of these, looking after each area of your health, they
mm.
all interlink as well. Every
Yes.
single one of them helps the
Mm,
other and sort of reaches into the other as well.
mm,
I mean, some
I
people
agree.
use running as sort of therapeutically,
Mm,
which is really quite interesting. But yeah, all of it is
mm.
interlinking.
Just things like getting regular checkups. I think if you have the opportunity to get your health checked up, take that opportunity.
My husband tried to book an appointment to do, we're over 50 now. It's like, yeah, let's just take care of ourselves a little bit. So
Mm,
he tried to book just a standard overall health check, which is now available for over 50s. Could he do it? Online, he just could not find a way to do it. It's like, go here, go there. After three or four redirections of various websites, couldn't. In the end, he had to go in person and book it with the receptionist. So yeah, life is not necessarily being made easy by technology, but yeah, you are
sure.
absolutely right.
And what I quite like about the Belgian health system is that if any check level is out of balance, say your blood test, and
Mhm.
there's a level they have, there's a whole
Yeah,
range of things they test, and, certain things, most things usually are okay, and then there's one or two things out of balance, and they will always look at that. And if they want you to investigate that further, then they will say to you, do that and do it reasonably quickly, just so that normally, my experience is just so that you
yeah,
eliminate any
yeah.
possibilities, um, just in case, there's something there which would indicate something more serious,
The sooner you capture it, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping on top of things like that for sure, making sure you get enough sleep. That's a challenge for me. That is a challenge.
What is it because you do too much or
Possibly,
so much?
possibly too much, so much. I love it. I love it all. And I love
Yeah,
to be able to, I wouldn't say, some people looking into my life would say, Sue, you pack in so much. Um, yes and no. I I think I'm a fairly good judge of what I should say yes to and what I should say no to.
fair enough.
And there are plenty of things I've said no to because they're not part of my life strategy, if you like, if I can talk about it in that sense. So it's being very, I do aims and objectives each year. I write out
Okay.
my aims and objectives each year, life aims, which means everything.
Yes.
Everything from the very meaningful and deep to the detail, sometimes weekly or daily, depending on, what the subject may be. And it's really important for me that if I'm offered a new opportunity or I come across a new opportunity or have a new idea, then I look back at my aims and objectives. Well, I've got them in my head.
Yeah.
My aims and objectives, my life strategy, and if that particular activity is not in line with the life strategy, then I would very much hesitate to engage. Very much so.
That's
And
really interesting.
so
Very
that's
good.
that's regulatory. That's a self-regulation for me to regulate
Because
my health.
yeah, the health and your life, it feels like that because you've got that strategy going on every
Mm,
year,
mm.
you clearly want to make sure that you make the most of your life
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
and you evaluate anything new, whether it fits in with your values and your life values and those objectives or
Mm,
not. You're
mm,
absolutely right. Does it
yeah.
fit? Does it not? If it doesn't
Mm,
fit, then I'm not interested.
mm.
So go on. Would you indulge in telling me what are your life objectives for this year? And
My life aim is to be the best person I can be. Um, and I suppose next to that is and it's associated with commitment to my Christian faith. So broadly serving God, I would call it.
yes,
Um, Being with family and being with friends. Yeah. And um, those are the most important things I would say where, in terms of my prioritization of what I do in
yes.
life.
Well,
So clearly, my Christian faith is all encompassing, enters everything, anything and everything, which is wonderful. But then, next next in line, but very much, up up with the biggest priorities is family. So out of any of the activities, these activities that I'm involved in, that I've explained to you, Ildiko, if a crisis emerges in the family, for instance, my
Then it
dad has
takes
a
priority.
turn for the worse, then I cancel everything and I go. That I will do. And I've said to my sister, because we work in partnership on,
Mm,
vis-a-vis my dad. And I said, look, that is what I will do. I'm busy. I'm really busy. Yes. And I have all sorts of meetings, encounters, projects. But if there's a family crisis and family emergency, it stops and I come. You know.
absolutely number one.
So
But
so no, that yeah.
the beautiful thing is that um, you are kind of, yes, as you said, in speech marks, in retirement, and all of the work that you do are flexible in that sense, which we have mentioned already, that you can actually take it with you anyway. But it's really quite nice that you've already created yourself that environment where, although you live abroad, you come back to the UK
Mm,
every single month to see friends and family. So that priority is very much present
mm,
in
yeah.
your technically everyday life.
So, Eldiko, would you permit me then to go back to the life strategy again and the
Yes, please
annual
do.
aims and objectives?
Please do.
So then I would break down my life objectives with this aim to be the best person I can be, whatever that means. I mean, I think many people have that sort of aim. You aspire to that, don't you? Because
Yes.
being the best person you can be means both internally to yourself, but externally to other people. And
Yes.
and the challenge is getting the two in balance.
Yeah.
Um, and if you can achieve a measure of stability, calm, contentment, joy internally, as well as in relation to your relationships to other people, then you have a win-win. And it's good for your health as well
Yeah,
if in that sort of
absolutely. Yeah.
situation. Um, but anyway, so the projects I've mentioned already, that we've talked about already, would be part of my life strategy. So, for instance, let me try and think. What?
These are the consultancy projects.
No. I would no.
Oh yeah, sorry, the other projects. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
the charitable projects. Yeah.
Yeah, for instance, those are my life projects. So to go over the main ones again, so there's Malawi. No, there's
Mm,
my consultancy. There's Malawi. There's the property management. There's Rotary. There's facilitation. And then there's the facilities committee at church.
yes.
So all of those are life projects. And I would line those up as my objectives, broadly to progress, to further develop those projects and give myself then some targets, some annual
Okay.
targets. You know, so I can't remember what I've done for property management, but I think it'll be something along the lines of, identifying a property that I could buy and refurbish and sell on. Yeah.
On the point of property, I was actually going to ask, started to say something along these lines about you
Mm,
coming to the UK. So, would you want to be finding these properties, or will you be using sources like other people to find you properties that are good projects for you? Although you are in the UK, as you said, was it 4 or 5 days a
mm,
month? Is that enough for you to actually find properties, or you do a lot of online research anyway
mm.
back in Belgium?
It's interesting. It's a very interesting question and something that's been going around in my mind quite a bit recently, because I'm at the beginning of that. And so establishing how you run how you address that particular challenge is important to get it right. Now, my house in France, for instance, I've done quite a bit of renovation, both inside and outside at different times of that place, and I've always done it remotely. So it's always been done from Belgium. And the
Okay.
way I've managed it, or the UK, as the case may be, but on my laptop, and the way I manage it, you would understand this, is I just ask the entrepreneurs to send me photos every day of what they've
Yeah.
done and
Yeah.
to describe to me what they're going to be doing the next day. And then I can field it from there. Um, and so that's what I've done before by way of experience.
Yes.
But if I'm taking on a whole property, and it may not be a big property, maybe a relatively small project in the grand scale of things as far as properties development is concerned, when I see some of the some of the developers and even the small scale developers, they're into bigger projects than I would be.
You can take a two-bedroom house,
Mm,
and if it needs a full refurb, a full
yes,
new bathroom, new kitchen,
yes,
fully replastered,
yes.
outside repainted, garden tidied up a little, you'd probably be looking at somewhere in the region of 6 to 8 weeks as a minimum, if it's a
Mm,
little bigger, or
sure.
rewiring as well and all that, or depending on how big the team is that goes in there. I mean, it could be turned around in 6 weeks, it could be turned around in 12 weeks
Mm,
if it's only a couple
yeah.
of people working on it. So it's kind of like, yeah, who do you find? How do you find them? But yeah, it is definitely something to seriously
So
consider beforehand.
that's right. So just to let you know, the conclusion I've come to is
Mm.
that I'm going to use a deal sourcer, and in
Yeah.
fact, that there's a business arrangement I have in place already with a couple of young property developers who I wanted to support, and I have done.
Okay.
And so they are business partners, and one of them is a deal sourcer.
Cool.
So I'm working with him at the moment, and another real big plus factor is that he not only deals sources, but with another of his business actually develops, buys and develops and sells properties as well. So, and he's got his power team.
Yes.
He's got his power team already. He's investing in the area that I'd like to invest in myself. And so I said to him, well, can I piggyback on your power team? Because for me, I mean, that would be a huge upfront investment, a time. This is time now
Yes.
to be able to identify, solicitor, accountant,
Yeah.
architect, planner, plumber, electrician, plasterer, roofer, whatever the case may be, kitchen fitter,
Yes.
bathroom fitter. I mean, that'd be huge, a huge task for me to do that, and something I suspect you only do over time. And I just haven't got the headspace or the time to do that. So that's a
Absolutely.
good example of something I've said to myself, well, look, I don't want to do that particularly. That feels like hard work for me, which is beyond what I want to
Mm.
do. So I will take a
Outsource
bit,
it.
yeah, yeah, I will take a bit of a risk, a financial risk, and say, okay, well, that's part of the costs. Any project that I have, any refurbishment project, clearly that will have to be factored into the costs.
Yes.
And but that's the way. But doing it that way, clearly, the deal sourcer's job is to source you a property which is at the most competitive price, and
Yes.
clearly the various entrepreneurs that you use to bring that sort of refurbishment project together. Um, if you get a crack team in place, then they give you a good return. So I'm hoping that, pay someone else to put this in place for me, but the return is that not only do I get my time back, but hopefully the outturn in terms of the finances will be better than if I had to do it all myself for the first time.
Yes, that's so right. Just the other day, I did a post on the saying, "Just because you can doesn't mean you should." And
Hmm,
obviously we've all had our fair share of the experience in our lives, and we did do a flip project ourselves, and it was like, yeah, let's do it ourselves because we're going to save money because we don't, then it's cheaper to pay ourselves.
hmm,
But then it went on for so long that if we halved the time, we could have probably paid the contractors, and it would have cost the same amount of money. So yes, it's you do have to experience these things
hmm,
without doubt. But yeah, if you can assess it up front, but because we were so skilled and equipped to do the work, it
hmm,
was very easy to lead ourselves down that path.
hmm.
But since you are remote as well,
Yes.
you know that it's hard work, then as long as you know that that sourcer is fully compliant
Hmm,
and reliable, then it's actually there's quite a lot of beauty to it all because obviously the absolute baseline, a property will get refurbished and used again as a lovely family home. But in the meantime, you'll be employing contractors and all working people in the area. So you are adding back into the environment, into the
hmm,
community, you know what I mean? And then you will end up with a bit of profit, but you have invested your time
hmm,
and money as well, and you are
hmm,
employing others. So yes, it is quite a win-win all round kind of
hmm.
business.
So yes, that is my next another project further down the line. I confess to being at this point a little bit concerned that I'm going to be able to manage my time. The big thing is about managing your time is that it's okay if you can accurately predict how much time a particular project or sub-project is going to take. But there's always the unknowns, the unforeseens, the unpredictable, and there has to be some spare time to be able to accommodate time
Yes.
overruns. And sometimes, that's not a good position to be in when these time overruns impinge on how you are going to use your time otherwise. So in other words, either they are stressful because you are, working at these various projects, whatever they may be, beyond what you had expected, and therefore, instead of taking your time over an evening meal and you maybe sit and watch TV for a while just to relax, then maybe you eat, but then you're back at the computer again, and and that's not good, I don't think, in retirement, where you have more choice.
Speech marks again. Those air
Yes.
speech marks again, retirement,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
as you are
Yes.
certainly far from it.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, even when you outsource, I think the most important thing to bear in mind, you still have to do your numbers. You
mm,
still have to do your due diligence.
exactly. Mm,
So there is still an amount of work involved. It's not
mm,
never ever fully hands off.
no.
But are you looking at investing in the area where your dad lives?
No, it's up in
Okay.
the northeast, actually. It's up in the
Okay.
northeast because having visited there and looked at what it's like up there, what's on the market, with a property manager himself,
Mm,
who spent a day with me, um, I could see what the potential was up there.
fair
In
enough.
in pla in places like Redcar, Hartlepool, Stockton-on-Tees, Middlesbrough. You
Fair
wouldn't have
enough.
thought, would you? You wouldn't have thought. They're one
No,
of
that's
the forgotten parts of the country, to be honest, north of Newcastle. Yeah.
I know a guy who's got an estate agency and now deal sourcing agency. He's now training as well. I met him a few times at some local property networking events down in the southwest. So obviously he travels quite a fair bit to promote his own business and to promote the northeast.
Mm,
So we signed up to his newsletter and we do get regular so property suggestions like source
mm,
properties like here's a deal, these are the numbers, etc. And
mm,
then my husband tends to look at the suggestions or like looking on property websites a little bit more. So I tend to take it on once we go a little further than that when I start to do the
mm,
number crunching, but he does the initial looking. And he said well he discovered that the north is supposed to be all this affordable and still cheap and this and the other with a good profit margin. But to be honest, what he was finding is that there's no difference between the Northeast or whatever they are suggesting in the newsletters compared to Plymouth.
mm,
So what's the point of investing in an area that we don't know? Might as well stick with our own backyard.
mm, mm.
So it's interesting. We always think that the grass is greener on the other side. And to be honest, when you really compare it, and then there are other people who don't live in Plymouth and they come and invest in Plymouth.
Mm,
So clearly they know something. You know what I mean? So yeah. But yeah, it's really good to hear that you actually visited the area.
mm,
You liked what you saw, and you've got a trusted team
mm.
that you
Sure.
can rely on. And I suppose even when you are in the UK for a few days, a month, occasionally maybe you will be able to go up and see your projects anyway,
Hopefully,
just to take a
hopefully.
bit of joy out of it.
I think it's absolutely essential that, whatever project you're working on and however hands-off it is, however much it's outsourced, that you do actually visit. Yes, for sure. That you keep in touch probably on a daily basis with the project manager, I would
Mm,
guess. You get your photos, I would guess, on a daily
mm.
basis. You quiz, well, what's the next stage? What have you done? What have you managed to complete? What's the next stage? Tomorrow, next week. But then clearly that you go up and, I mean, visit. Yeah, absolutely, when you can.
Did you make it
Uh,
clear to the team that you will expect photos every single day?
I don't think we're at that stage yet,
Okay, fair
Ildiko.
enough. Because
No,
I'm
no.
not entirely sure that daily photos are a thing. So if you
Ah,
do want them, I think make it sure, make it clear to
mm,
them that you would expect daily
mm,
reports on the progress.
yeah,
I think I'm not sure the contractors will welcome that idea, but I think if you say it early enough, then they can incorporate it into their dealings.
yes, yes,
But yeah, that I don't know. It's just a hunch.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not entirely sure the
That's fine.
contractors would be. Not everybody takes daily photos. I mean, I suppose people do like the progress photos, especially when they're doing it for themselves and they're putting it on social media and stuff.
Mm,
But maybe you can actually link it to that. That I just want to
mm,
keep it going or whatever. And then if you do, it's your business. If you don't, it's still your business.
mm.
But I don't know. Just mention it early on.
Thank you. That's possibly a good bit of advice. Thank you very much, LDK.
No worries. No worries.
Free advice. That's not bad.
There you go. Well, every
Always
single
think.
conversation has got bits of information in it that somebody didn't know. So
Mm,
this whole podcast is supposed to be educational for people who want to start a new business, who are sort of, yeah, literally later in life, retiring from corporate or anything and still nursing a bit of a dream, a bit of an idea.
mm,
And that's exactly what I want to put out in the world for us
mm,
to encourage
sure.
people to nurture that idea, nurture that dream, and make it a reality. You're not
Mm,
old, whether you are 50, 60, 70,
no.
you're not old. You just need to get on with it and keep
Mm,
yourself fit and young in your mind
mm.
and your body.
No, I think that's key, Ildiko, what you've mentioned there, mind and body. Yeah, the two are very much linked, and clearly your mindset is so important. I mean, people sometimes minimize, or don't pay sufficient attention to, what's going on in what's actually going on in their heads, and self-awareness is part of this as well. And I think self-awareness is probably something that you develop over time. And what you have as a mature person is that self-awareness, is the life experience with its ups and
Mm,
downs, and so you learn over time, and your awareness should um, increase over time, but and particularly your self-awareness, but also your awareness of your environment around you and what the implications are of different of parameters moving in whatever situations you're working with. And I think and I think that's key, and related to a sort of really if one can generate a positive mindset, a sort of a glass half full as opposed to glass
yeah,
half empty, and just be aware yourself that if you think it, if sometimes your thinking gets to be glass half empty as opposed to glass half full, then somehow draw yourself up and say, hey, wait a minute, what am I thinking there? I'm not
absolutely.
sure I like
Acknowledge it.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
not sure
acknowledge
I,
it and then flip it round.
and it's a choice. Clearly, there's loads of choice in this, and I think making, being the best person you can be, making the most of life is all about choice, and it's all about constructive and positive choice, and identifying those moments where you're tempted to move the other way, that way, backwards or downwards, however you picture it, and to actively refocus and say, no, no, I don't want that. I'm not going to do that. And then, focus forwards or upwards or whatever, however you conceive of it, and then put it into practice, operationalize it and think to yourself, well, what can I do? What practical steps can I take to ensure at this particular moment that I face positively, and not face negatively, if you like. And perhaps one positive choice, one positive activity will lead to a change in mindset or give you a few more ideas that you wouldn't have had if you'd remained in your, non-choosing, somehow negative downward spiral.
Yes,
So I'm very much for, you know, openness, creativity, let your creativity, fruitfulness, awareness of life's richness, a determination to make the most of your life and making positive choices.
absolutely. I think that is
It's
a
wonderful.
very important part to your message that you've been talking about is that every year you write down, and I think the key in it that you write
Mm,
down your life choices and aims and objectives for that year. And by simply putting those ideas and aims and targets onto paper,
mm,
they become reality. And
yeah.
again, it's I think a lot of people perhaps don't realize that it's not just the writing down, but then you've taken an action. So there's muscle memory in your body. Then you've seen it, you've taken a visual memory of it, and all these sort of things, and they all feed back into your conscious and subconscious to then whatever comes your way. And even if it's a glass half empty
Mm,
situation,
yes.
then all these things in the back of your mind will help
Yes.
you
Sure.
acknowledge it, flip it around, and then move it into a more
Yeah.
positive or
Sure.
the direction that you want to go to.
Mm.
But
No, I
yeah, so I think
completely
that's
agree.
very important message. Write down
Mm,
your targets, your aims,
mm.
objectives. Yeah, that's really powerful.
It's the richness of life as well, is it not? Because, they're, I mean, they're challenges, and that sort of situation you face, I can empathize and sympathize with very much, because it's in a different way. It's the sort of thing I encounter every day as well. Should I do this or should I do that? Should
Mm.
I do it this way? Should I do it that way? What is the best way? What's the most efficient way? What's the most effective way? What's the best way for me as a person, for me, as a person in my social environment, in my family environment, in my work environment, um, and um, being clear about the choices you have in front of you as well, so that, as you say, when you hit a situation, as you were saying, where you're wondering, well, is this a glass half full or a glass half empty that I'm actually experiencing here? And you're very right, to sort of stop, reflect, take a step back, observe a little bit how you feel,
Mm.
because it's very
Yeah.
easy to, in the sort of glass half empty situation, it's very easy to sort of plunge the depths of whatever you're feeling, and if you're not, I found, certainly my own personal experiences, that sometimes negative feelings can compound.
Oh, everything
They,
compounds.
ooh, and then they're off, and you're in a spiral of all sorts of negative feelings, just because there's been a trigger, there's been an encounter with someone else that you haven't liked very much at all. There's been a meeting which has gone badly. There's an argument. You've got angry and you didn't want to get angry, and so on and so forth. And
Start to
sometimes,
focus on the wrong things.
yeah, and if you're demanding of yourself and demanding of life, then these things can really affect you. But I found over time, it's good, yeah, to stop at those points and recognize what's happening, and relativize as well. Oh, it's not, come on, Sue. It might seem catastrophic at this particular moment, but, let's have a bit of rationality here and set this in context. And and of course, you go away, you do something else, you have a day, you pass on to the next day. Hopefully you sleep in between times, and you can sleep, but you get up the next day, and maybe it seems completely different at that point,
Yeah, and
of
enjoy the
course.
bird song, enjoy
Ah,
all sorts of positive little
sure.
things. Minute little things can really brighten up your
Mm,
day.
mm,
But if I could just jump on a little keyword you said
mm,
a moment ago, compounding. I mean, one of my
mm,
favorite books is Darren Hardy's Compound Effect.
mm,
And basically, whatever you do, whether it's good or bad, it compounds over time. Just
mm,
imagine if you started to put a spoonful of sugar in your coffee over 10 years, or probably over a year, you could put on so much weight. And over 10 years, you could be really quite obese and
mm,
your life just changes dramatically. But it works the other way around. If you start doing a small thing like going for a 10-minute walk every day
mm,
over a year or over 5 years and 10 years, that can seriously improve your health
mm,
and fitness.
sure.
So
Mm,
yeah, that
mm,
compounding, and it could work indeed just in a course of a day. Just pick up on something bad, and then all you keep concentrating is on what's gone wrong.
mm,
Then of course you're going to end up having a bad day.
mm,
But if you put it to bed at that point and then concentrate on the next good thing,
mm.
then your day could end up as a very nice day.
I'm very very enthusiastic as well about living in the present. So living in the
Okay.
moment, experiencing the moment, and the moment might be great and fantastic and joyful and enriching, or it might be one of those moments where you plunge the depths of a not very nice emotion, and in a sense, well, both are valid, because they're part of life. And they're facts of life, that's what happens, the up and the down. But just to experience the moment, and in both those situations, whether it's a sort of a higher level experience or a lower level experience, to recognize it, to acknowledge it, and look at it a little bit from the outside and see what you can learn from it. So you observe yourself, see
Yeah.
what you can learn from it, and not, sometimes if you find yourself sort of in the present, whatever that present means at that particular time, but you're distracted, oh, I had that conversation yesterday, and oh, I wasn't very happy, and oh, I wish it had been like this, and I wish it had been like that. After a point,
To be honest,
it's pointless to sort of dwell on that in your mind,
I
you know
make every effort in my life not to be like that.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
it's some people say that, oh, all this positive thinking and whatever mantras and positive affirmations, it's all just malarkey, but it's not. It's kind of what you do with it.
mm,
So I do that in the morning to set myself up for a positive day, and then I still go and do the work, and
mm,
it's still hard work,
mm,
but I at least I go at it with a positive mindset, and I know that I'll get through it because there'll be a result at the end, instead
mm,
of bogging myself down in the morning with the silly things like, oh, I've got so much to do or whatever. Then if you start on that
yeah.
platform, then the only way is down.
Let me give you the benefit of my own preparation in the morning. I don't.
Go for it.
It's not dissimilar actually to these affirming statements that you either read or
I
you
personally
read to
listen.
yourself. You listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. What I do, and I hope you'll forgive this rather detailed reference to my Christian faith,
No
but I
problem.
pick up the Bible. I pick up the Bible and I'm reading, and I read a passage from the Bible. It's not always universally, positive and constructive in the sense of, oh wow, this particular text, is gonna really set me up for the day, but it's always informative, and it's always for me, faith is something which underpins, what I do. So all this talk about positive mindset, and all that we've talked about so far sits well with my faith. So whatever I read in the Bible, inevitably, it's going to be something which, in its diverse form and forms, is going to encourage me for what faces me, what I face during the
Yes.
day. So that's my equivalent. And as I say, in a
Yeah.
sense, it's not dissimilar because it's preparation.
Manifestation and prayer are effectively the same thing. You pray
Mm,
to God, talk to the universe,
mm,
same thing. What we
mm,
want is a better, nicer, more ideal life for ourselves.
mm,
And we express it to a higher force, higher power that we
mm.
believe in.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I kind
sure.
of feel like you keep apologizing to me, but yes, I very much welcome your opinion, because you're not the first, not even the second person I've interviewed or conversed with who is a practicing Christian. And I truly
That's
hope
good.
that Christians don't take it as an offense either, that in my opinion, manifestation and prayer are the same thing.
Mm,
We want a better life from a force we can't see, but we
yes,
believe in.
indeed. No, I'm happy, very happy with this conversation. That what we both say just now, they sit well with
Yeah.
each other. Yeah, I would say, you know, yeah, no, no,
And we
it's
both
it's
believe
brilliant
in,
stuff.
yeah, having a better life for ourselves and having it laid out for ourselves. Yeah, wonderful.
Mm.
It's nice to be on the same wavelengths.
It's also about the deeper side of life, because I do believe we have, I mean, souls. We have a
It is.
spiritual. Not everybody believes we have a spirituality. We have a spiritual existence.
Well,
We
of
have a
course we
spiritual
do.
experience. But well, of course we do. I mean, I would share that, but not everybody does. But I believe we do. I believe we have a
Well,
spiritual. Very much so.
I very
Um,
much, if I may say so, preach about, but no, I don't preach, but show people. So basically, to look after your physical health, which we talked about, you swim, I exercise, your mental health, your intellectual health, and your spiritual health. And that's very much relating to your core values and your business's values. And if you don't have that connection,
mm,
then how do you run a business?
yeah,
And
sure.
it's important. And also all the things we do, they all connect one way or another. So yes,
Mm,
we very, very much have a spiritual
mm,
side and spiritual health to ourselves.
yeah.
And we do need to look after it. And we need to take that responsibility to look after it as well as all the
Mm.
others.
Yeah, I completely agree because spirituality for me and one's spiritual experience is what is really deep inside. So, and it's a combination of the mental, emotional, and physical. Uh,
Mm,
and and the experience is in the mind, I think, which is one of the most complex, if not the most complex organ of the body, if you
yeah,
call it an organ,
absolutely.
part of the body, and then the stomach. I mean, I've heard it say, doctors say, well, stomachs have a mind of their own.
Knowledge rather than just a saying that we do actually have a second brain in our stomach.
Mm,
So no wonder this gut feeling and all the rest of it, all the other sayings that come with it, have come from there because it
mm,
has been real. But I believe it. I either heard or read something a while back, and maybe I should research it a little bit more, especially if I want to quote it. That is actually now known to be a sort of second brain
mm.
in a way in our
Yeah,
stomach.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right because that's my understanding as well. So,
Thank you very much for sharing all of your daily, weekly, annual routines. And it's wonderful to hear that there are other people out there in the world like myself who look
mm,
after all areas of their health and very
try.
happy to do so. I
Mm,
think you're doing a bit more than try. You're quite structured about it. You're very conscious about it.
mm.
It's really quite wonderful to talk to someone who's believing in exactly the same things.
It's very motivating, isn't it? When you
It
can
is. It
share
is.
discussions with others who share those aspirations, values,
Mm.
who are motivated in a similar way. And that's part of that's the enriching part of life is for me, certainly for me, from my side, is to look for that in the other person that I'm speaking with, and try and tease it out somehow as well, so you get that deeper connection. It's
When you were talking
wonderful.
about your swimming, indeed, I was thinking exactly the same. You said you go swimming in the morning.
Mm,
I exercise and cold shower in the morning just so that I energize myself
mm.
at the beginning of the day. Right. So you've obviously killed the punchline already because I normally ask people at the end, do you wish to, or are you looking at retiring? But you literally said it almost in the second minute, I think, that you've got no intention of retiring at all. Um,
No, no.
and the other question I ask people is, would you consider setting up another business? But you've already told us about your upcoming property ventures. Um, I really admire how you keep yourself intellectually um,
Mm.
fresh and up to date and doing a lot of research within your work. So, would there be anything to recommend to people, anything to read or watch or listen to?
Personal development books, I would say,
Mm. Do you
as
have any
much as
favorite
anything.
ones?
Tony Robbins,
Okay.
again, the people you're with today, through whom are able to do what you're doing today, Ildiko. So, Rob Moore
Yeah.
is inspirational as well, for sure. And and some of the things he writes and his podcasts and so on. I did actually have a spell. I don't do this anymore because it's a bit awkward. It was a bit awkward technologically, but
Right.
I did for a spell when I was swimming in the mornings. I used to wear little earpieces,
Okay.
which so
Okay.
while I was swimming up and down in the pool, I'd be listening to those at the same time.
And my
Anyway.
final question to you today, Sue, is would you be able to recommend any other lovely person who you know that started a new business in a later stage of their life who could be a good candidate to come along to talk to me and share their story with the world?
I did ask someone about this, but she actually said no, that wouldn't be for her.
Okay,
She's her own. She does her own thing. She does her own thing and didn't feel
that's
the need.
fine.
So that was fair enough. That was a decision. There are others, yes.
On that note, I would like to thank you very, very much for coming along and having a discussion with me about business in your 60s and all these lovely health routines that you have in your life. And it's been very engaging, very educational, and very inspirational without doubt. Thank you very much, Sue.
And thank you, Ildiko.
Thank you for listening to New Business in Later Life with me, Ildiko Seeley, where we say no to slowing down and yes to starting up. Loved what you've heard? Please share it or screenshot it and tag me on socials. Let's show the world what thriving in later life really looks like and share with a friend who is ready for their next chapter. Please subscribe so you are always in the loop. And if you were ready to stop running on empty and start running on purpose, come join us. All the links are waiting in the show notes, including my guests' contacts, the Encorepreneurs Club, and a few tools and services I personally use in my business to help you thrive in yours. Until next time, refuel, refocus, reinvent.